I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. You know, we keep our eyes open for interesting stories of all kinds on all kinds of platforms around the Northwest, and we found a report out of Alaska that we think really is worth your time. The story is from the Associated Press. The headline shows us where it's going. Anchorage homeless face cold and bears. A plan to offer a one-way airfare out reveals a bigger crisis. Okay, we could not turn away from that one. The mayor of Anchorage, Alaska, Dave Bronson, suggested the city buy one-way plane tickets for homeless people who wanted to go somewhere warmer than Alaska. Although he said he'd also fly folks to other locations outside of Alaska if that's what they wanted. He's quoted in the AP story saying, when people approach us and want to go someplace warm or they want to go to some town where they have family or friends that can take care of them, if they choose to go there, we'll support that. Now, before you decide the mayor is shooting from the hip with wild ideas, which I have to admit kind of went through my mind, here's some context. Anchorage has about 3,000 homeless folks, according to the AP, but only 614 shelter beds. During COVID, the city turned its arena into an additional shelter for 500 more people. But after complaints about violence, drug use, trespassing, and litter, it was turned back into an arena for hockey and concerts this past spring, so that's gone. According to the report, 2 years ago, the mayor suggested building a shelter and navigation center on the east side of Anchorage. But the city council whittled down his plan, and the capacity eventually was only 150 beds when really hundreds more are needed. So that's a problem, especially since it's really cold in Alaska during the winters. Last year, 8 people died there from exposure in Anchorage. That's a record. The mayor said he had no choice but to suggest a ticket out of town. I have a moral imperative here, and that's to save lives. And if that means giving them a few $100s for an airline ticket to go where they want to go, I'm going to do that, he said. Well, okay, except that lots of people seem to just hate that idea. One of the groups is the American Civil Liberties Union of Alaska. They issued a statement about the idea that reads, "It is past time for state and local leaders to address the underlying causes of homelessness. Airplane tickets are a distraction, not a solution." And the chair of the Anchorage City Council said the reality is there's no place to send these people because this is their land. Any policy that we make has to pay credence to that simple fact. And he added, and so we cannot be supporting policies that would take people and displace them from their home, even if their home is not what you or I would call home. Now, in case you're interested, yes, there does seem to be kind of a feud going on between the city council, which is liberal leaning, and the mayor, who's Republican. So that's adding to all this. In the meantime, the mayor's plan is not funded, and it may not really even happen. At this point, it's just words. But the idea of putting homeless folks on a bus or plane to somewhere else has been around for decades. And some places have been pretty open about it. Back in 2013, we at KGW here did a story about San Diego and San Francisco giving homeless folks one-way bus tickets to Portland. That same report showed that since 2002, St. Petersburg, Florida, had put 13 people on buses to Portland. In all those cases, people were supposedly coming here to live with a relative or someone who would help them. And I hope they did find shelter. While we're looking into the past, we probably also should remember the city of Portland has done that very thing, giving people a one-way ticket to ride out of town. For some context, let's take a look at this 2017 story from investigative reporter Kyle Leboshi.
We first met Dylan Hendershot in May of 2016. He'd been living on the streets of downtown Portland when he received an $82 bus ticket out of town.
And you are taking a bus today from Portland to where?
Spokane, Washington.
Hendershot hoped to reunite with family, which he did briefly. But almost a year later, the 19-year-old tells KGW he's still homeless, bouncing from one friend's place to the next. And he's not the only one.
And it's a natural progression.
KGW's investigative team looked at all 275 tickets purchased under Portland's Ticket Home program. Of those receiving tickets, roughly half, 49%, reported they were in stable housing 3 months after arriving in a new town. The other half were either still homeless or unaccounted for.
Someone who just can't get a hold of that person to get an answer one way or the other.
The city and county budgeted $200,000 for the first year of the program, which paid for bus, train, and airplane tickets, sending homeless Portlanders across the country. They ended up in cities big and small, From New Hampshire to California, one person even got a bus ticket to the Dalles.
We have an influx of people that seem to be coming out of Portland.
Mayor Stephen Lawrence says the homeless population in the Dalles is growing. Resources are stretched thin, and Portland's Ticket Home program isn't helping.
In theory, it's probably something that could work, but in actuality, I don't think it's being done right. I think, someone can say to them, I have a contact, here's a ticket, boom. And whether they do or not.
I mean, it's one thing to say, you're not welcome at our shelter, and here's a bus ticket, get out of here. That's not happening.
Dennis Thuralt, spokesperson for Multnomah County's Joint Office of Homeless Services, says calls are made to verify someone has a place to live before they're given a ticket. And there's a follow-up phone call 3 months after they arrive.
We're helping people who need a little bit of a boost to get back to somewhere else. They're here, they're stuck here. They have help waiting for them, people who will take care of them, and we're able to connect them to those people.
Looking back, Dylan Hendershot says he appreciates that bus ticket. In Spokane, he's got a support network of friends and family that he didn't have in Portland. It may not be the perfect solution, he said, but it helped. He's no longer sleeping in a tent in downtown Portland.
Again, that was a report from 2017, pretty much what the Anchorage mayor is now talking about. Now, I know many of you wonder about how many homeless in our area actually grew up here. A New York Times article over the weekend on the homeless problems that we're experiencing referred to government data showing that Portland is attractive to homeless folks from many different places. They linked to the 2019 point-in-time report of homelessness. We looked at the most recent report that was completed. That's for 2022. This table shows that of all the people counted who were unsheltered in emergency or transitional housing, 20% said they were originally from Multnomah County. 3% had no answer, which leaves 77% from somewhere else. Of those, 53% said they'd been here more than 2 years. One more graph here. This is from that same point-in-time count of all the people they talked with who were homeless when they came to our area. Roughly 38% said they're from Clark and Clackamas or Washington County or somewhere outside the metro area in Oregon. Nearly 57% said they were from Washington, California, or somewhere else in America. And for 3%, the birth location was unknown. Okay, I know that's a lot of information, and even the researchers admit that these point-in-time counts are kind of just a glimpse of the full picture. You don't get the whole thing. But the bottom line to the story is the city of Anchorage is struggling with their homeless population, and the mayor wants to give them a ticket to ride. So what are your thoughts about that plan? Is it a good solution to reunite folks with family or friends who can help them? Or is that just a smokescreen to get those people out of the city and let someone else deal with them? Send us your thoughts, will you? Let us know what you think. We're always fascinated to get input from you, and whether you're watching live or later online, I want to hear from you. Our email address is thestory@kgw.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail. The phone number is 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. Now, let's talk about the miles of homeless camps along the Springwater Corridor Trail in southeast Portland. People camping along the trail has been a problem for years, and it does not look like it's going away anytime soon. Neighbors told our Blair Best that living near the trail, that can be a real nightmare.
Parts of the Springwater Corridor Trail in southeast Portland look harmless. During the day, that is. Neighbors say that all changes at night.
Last night they were shooting at my sister's house, and a week ago they shot at her house and she had to call the cops.
And this isn't new. Homeless people have camped along the trail for years. It's more than 20 miles long and goes through Boring, Gresham, and Portland. This is what parts of it looked like back in 2016.
It's a fight or flight for the last 23 years.
This woman has seen it all. She didn't want to show her face on camera for fear of retaliation from the homeless people, who she believes already target her house that borders the trail.
Fighting these people off my fence, literally trying to climb over my fence, throwing needles at me, feces, dead animals. And now I got to figure out who to call in government to come help.
The city of Portland says keeping the trail clear and safe is always a priority, but they can't force people to leave.
The city's pushing everybody right here. Why? because they can.
Now, some people argue that since the city is focusing their homeless efforts on the downtown core, that homeless people are moving out to more remote places like here along the Springwater corridor. But today, city crews are out here removing camps along this trail.
In the last 6 months, the city has cleared 65 of these campsites. In the past 2 weeks, they've put 10 people who were willing into a Safe Rest village.
Are mostly, homeless people that are trying to sell their drugs.
Jonathan has lived on the trail for 5 years, during which he's had 10 encampments. He says to survive out here, you have to watch your back.
People getting beat up, women getting raped, killed, a lot of drugs.
And even for those who have homes,
I can't walk down the street, so I made this.
finding peace of mind takes work.
So this is my paradise. And then when you walk outside of it, it's total hell and sick to my stomach. Totally sick to my stomach that the city's allowed this to happen.
In Southeast Portland, Blair Best, KGW News.
Now, while Blair was out on the trail today, there were several other things that she spotted that she was not able to get into her main story. But for our show, there's always a little bit more to the story.
So I briefly touched on it in this story, but a lot of homeless people out here have been living along this trail for upwards of 10 years. And being out here, it almost feels like you're in their neighborhood in a sense, because there's these little inlets off the trail, and that's where their camps are. And we were talking with this one guy, and after we finished talking with him, he took his bike and he went into this secret little trail that I didn't even see, and it goes to the next inlet. So it's like they check on their friends, they have a little neighborhood community out here. And you don't really notice it when you're just walking or riding your bike. You really have to just look off the trail and you'll see all the little trails that connect all these campsites. Another thing I wanted to add was the City of Roses crew that is removing the camps and the garbage along the trail today. Here, I'll flip around. There they are. There's a woman with that team and she's doing outreach. Now we hear oftentimes that these city crews do outreach while they remove the camps, but we don't always see that piece. And I can tell you, this one woman has been talking with this other homeless woman for about an hour. She's still doing it as I'm recording this now. And she's, asking her the basic questions, but it's really nice to see someone from the city, hired group to really put the time and effort into helping this homeless woman. But again, it takes a long time to help just one person. Okay, so as we're walking back to the car, a lady who lives by the trail, she said the only reason the city is cleaning up these camps now is because Hood to Coast is coming and runners use the trail and they need to make the trail look nice. Take that for what you will. It's an interesting thought.
Interesting indeed, and frankly, not surprising. Hood to Coast is August 25th and 26th this month, and the mayor's office basically confirmed what that woman told Blair, telling us the trail and its surrounding natural areas are monitored and cleared regularly year-round, with extra special attention leading up to the Hood to Coast Relay at the end of every August, which includes a course of the race along that public trail. Coming up next on the story, today marks the beginning of a brand new federal policy that bans most incandescent light bulbs from being sold in stores. It all has to do with energy efficiency. We'll explain when the policy first came to light, if you will, and why it's taken 16 years to take effect. Plus, what bulbs you will not find in the store anymore when the story returns. The KGW School Supply Drive is underway. Some of the most needed school supplies are pencils, lined paper, crayons, and markers. You can drop off any of these supplies at any On Point branch, Dick's Auto Group location, or one of the many community partners like Thinker Toys in Southwest Portland. And all this week, check this out, for every dollar donated at any On Point branch, they will donate $5. We want to thank On Point Community Credit Union, Safeway, Pacific Power, and Dick's Auto Group for everything they're doing to make this year's supply drive a huge success. Well, what do you think about light bulbs like this? I think they're fascinating. One of my favorite science classes, I was telling producer Colton earlier today, was when I learned how they worked. You know, like an electric current goes through these things, heats up the coil, and the metal inside makes it glow. Pretty cool, huh? But starting today, it's illegal for stores to sell most incandescent light bulbs like this, well, smaller than this. President Biden implemented a partial ban last year, but it fully took effect today. And this policy was not born overnight, by the way. It goes back to President George W. Bush. As Devin Haskins explains, this bill does not cover all incandescent light bulbs like this, but does cover most of them.
So for most of my incandescents, they're pretty much all right here. This is kind of what's left.
At Sunland Lighting, what was on the shelf Monday will be missing Tuesday.
You have 25-watt light bulbs.
These boxes of incandescent bulbs will now be dust collectors, part of the store's inventory they can't sell.
They'll kind of just be a little collection in the basement. Hold on to them for a few years.
This ban on certain light bulbs dates back to a 2007 law signed by President Bush. It required the Secretary of Energy to determine if there should be a minimum 45 lumens per watt rule. That rule was adopted in 2017 by Obama, withdrawn in 2019 under Trump, and adopted again in 2022. Most incandescents don't meet that minimum threshold, therefore they can't be sold. The more lumens, the more light it produces. The more watts it uses means more energy used. So take these two for example. The incandescent on the left produces 6 lumens per watt using 25 watts, whereas the LED on the right produces more than 92 lumens per watt and uses only 2.7 watts. LEDs also last longer.
If you need 15s, we got 2 left for you.
I'll take them.
Bronwyn Wilson, like many customers on Monday at Sunland, were buying what they could before they couldn't.
I'll probably get some stronger ones just to have a couple in my cupboard for lamps that I have stronger light in. And eventually, of course, we'll have to switch over in all lamps and all lights. So, yeah.
That was Devin Haskins reporting. The Department of Energy estimates the new ban will save U.S. consumers nearly $3 billion on their utility bills and project it will cut carbon emissions by 222 million metric tons over the next 3 decades. But you're probably wondering which incandescent bulbs are not banned under this new policy. Here's a quick list. Appliance lamps, including fridge and oven lights, black lights, bug lamps, plant lights, floodlights, traffic signals, and some other specialty lights, including marine lamps, and some odd-sized bulbs are not banned. You're welcome. Up next on the story, we're headed down to the KGW vault to honor the life of a former KGW anchor from the 70s. John North recently passed away, and we're taking a look back at his life and his time here in the Portland area, which set him up for decades of success along the West Coast. Now to an update on Portland's beloved Belmont goats and a potential move to a big chunk of land that's home to a vacant, sprawling mansion known as the Blackberry Castle. You may have heard there was supposed to be an auction last week for the castle, but it's been postponed. So what do the goats and the property have to do with each other? Well, the goats and the all-volunteer nonprofit effort that keep the herd together are not in the market to buy the property, possibly worth up to $5 million. But some goat-friendly interests are. If those folks were able to snag Blackberry Castle and the land, the plan would be to bring the goats up there and allow people access to go visit them. But because that auction is being put off for a few weeks, the Belmont goats are looking at various options that may still include becoming residents on the hills surrounding Blackberry Castle. Of course, the goats have been in Portland as a fixture for many years, living first on a lot just off southeast Belmont, then moving several times since to different locations. The city has put them on city-owned parcels, even where the goats could graze. And they need a new home for the next generation.
We made a decision that we wanted to try to find land to hopefully eventually have babies brought into the herd to allow them to continue.
We'll keep you posted as we learn more about whatever happens next with those Belmont goats. When we say we read your emails and listen to your voicemails, I mean, we really do. We mean it. And an email from a viewer named Larry caught our attention recently. He wrote to us saying that KABC News in Los Angeles is reporting the death of reporter John North, who also worked for our station. So our team went down to the KGW vault and found the station's file on John North that included all kinds of photos and memories from his time here in Portland. Many of you really longtime KGW viewers may recognize North. He was an anchor here from the late 1975s to the spring of '79. He came to us from Washington, D.C. and spent previous years reporting and anchoring in cities like Dallas, Indianapolis, and Philadelphia. In fact, his file downstairs even included the press release the station sent out announcing his arrival in November of '75 to co-anchor the Northwest Tonight Show every weeknight at 5:30. He reported on all kinds of stories around town, from housing development to a feature story about a circus.
Consider the circus band. A circus without a band is like a B-movie without music.
Yes, well said, sir. One of the North's big projects here was a week-long investigative series on a murder case in Jackson County. According to the station press release, it was the first time KGW attempted such an in-depth investigation, and it led to a parole board review for one of two men convicted of first-degree murder. In 1979, North left KGW for KABC in Los Angeles, and after a brief stint with ABC National News from 1980 to '82, he returned to KABC, where he worked as a reporter in LA until his retirement 10 years ago in 2013. KABC says politics were his bread and butter, but he reported on every major story in Southern California for decades, including the trial of LA police officers who beat Rodney King and the O.J. Simpson trial, which he covered, we're told, every day for more than 2.5 years. North's son described his father as a strong, hardworking, loving, caring, and giving man. After his retirement in 2013, North spent the last decade doing what he loved, riding his Harley-Davidson motorcycles and spending time with his family. John North passed away while in hospice care just over a week ago. He was 78 years old. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. And a quick programming note regarding Thursday. Here's a look at the afternoon lineup that day. We are not going to have a show for you because the NFL is doing preseason football. Yes, already. But you can bet we'll be back every night after that, including Friday, with everything you love about the story. Just a reminder, the story, our story, that never ends. Stick around now for the good stuff coming your way next, and I'll see you back here at 6:30.